Hi everyone. Please let me know if you can't hear me. We're going to go ahead and get started. We were just waiting a few minutes past 6 p.m. to make sure that everyone was able to get here. My name is Sydney Steen. I work for the North Carolina Arts Council, and I'm here with representatives from the counties in this region for the Artist Support Grant. So welcome. Thanks for attending, whether you're, on Zoom or on Facebook Live or watching this later on some website. I was going to take a moment to sort of go through the Artist Support Grant application and provide a little bit of background and context about the grant, where it came from, and then leave some time for questions and answers with representatives from your arts organizations who you might be in contact with. So again, this is for Region 17, and the counties in this region to where you can apply are Buncombe, Haywood, Henderson, Polk, Rutherford, and Transylvania counties. And the Arts Council for which you'll submit your application is the Haywood County Arts Council. All right, so let's get started here. So the Artist Support Grant is actually based off of an existing program that no longer functions, but it's called the Regional Artist Project Grant. Some of you might be familiar with it. It may have applied in the past or won the awards, or maybe you're new to this grant program or your Arts Council or the State Arts Council altogether. But the Artist Support Grant was inspired by the Regional Artist Project Grant, and both are what some nickname the Selfish Artist Grant. So they are grants for artists to support themselves for professional and artistic development. So this means that you could use this grant to enhance your skills and abilities to create work, to bring your work to audiences, or improve your business operations as an artist. And this year, especially due to the onset of COVID-19, the North Carolina Arts Council was really focused on reprioritizing grants for artists and organizations to go towards stabilization. And the first year of the Artist Support Grant is sort of born out of this initiative. We want to provide as much support as we can to artists, and this was one of the answers to that. So eligibility for application is very straightforward. And the great thing is that you could be emerging, mid-career, or an established artist, and all stages of careers are accepted. They will not count or help you. Your work will be first and foremost what is judged, as well as your project, but it doesn't matter if you're 3 years in or if you're 30 years in. So everyone is available to apply or eligible to apply, regardless of how long you've been an artist, as long as you are demonstrating a commitment to spending a significant portion of your time on your career and on your work as an artist. And all genres are welcome. So the Artist Support Grant is intended to support a broad range of disciplines, and this can include visual, literary, interdisciplinary, dance, performance, music, and everything in between. Now, I won't go through all of this text because it is in the guidelines, but I will note some important aspects to note. So this grant is for individuals, but it's also for small unincorporated groups of artists. So if you are collaborating with another artist, or if you're part of a small, artist team or a band, small groups are able to apply. Probably mostly individual artists will, but if you're a small unincorporated group, no worries, this grant is also for you. Now, residency, the minimum requirement is that you have lived in North Carolina for at least 1 year, and hopefully you probably lived in your region for the majority of that time. Now, you must be 18 years old and either a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident alien. And you need to apply to the region where you spend the majority of your time. So if you happen to live in more than one place throughout the state, you want to apply to the region where you spend, 6 months in a day, so where you spend the majority of your time. Again, you just have to have lived in North Carolina for at least 1 year, and this applies to all other members of your small team if you're applying on behalf of a small group. So just some fine print. If you are an artist who's a sole proprietor and has already received a grant from us for this fiscal year from the North Carolina Arts Council, you are ineligible to apply. You should know by now if this applies to you. If you don't, or if you have questions, please let me know. And the conflict of interest is very straightforward. So if you are a board or a staff member of any of the participating organizations, or you have family members who are, you and your family members are ineligible to apply. So this means, of the participating arts councils, Haywood County Arts Council, Asheville Area Arts Council, that sort of thing. So I want to talk about the two main criteria upon which your application will be judged. First and foremost is artistic merit. This criteria is weighted twice. It is the most important. And how we define this is demonstrated talent in an art form and overall excellence of the artist's work, as well as clear commitment to a career as a practicing professional artist. A few items of note. You could be just starting out, a few years in, and we all know that some artists are lucky enough to make their living from selling the work, and others have many jobs, right, outside of being an artist. As long as you can show your commitment to your career as an artist, then you're all set for this. Now, artistic merit is judged by a panel of experts. So what's going to happen is each region, as they receive applications, they're going to start staffing their panels with panelists who are artists or arts experts that know the discipline of the applications which they're reading. So meaning your application will be reviewed by someone who knows the discipline. And now the second criteria is project merit, and project is loosely defined. When we say project, it's more along the lines of a tangible outcome, which I'll go into in a second. But the two items for this criteria are benefit of the proposed project to your artistic professional growth, and also feasibility of the proposed project. So in a sense, when you're crafting your application, you want to almost convey to the panel that you're able to pull this project off, whatever it may be, that you're sort of a project manager in a sense, that it's within your capacity to do this. Now, when I say project is loosely defined, this is what I'm talking about. So the grant will fund a variety of items, and I'm going to go through them now. The majority of what we typically see for this type of grant is the completion or presentation of new work. This means that you can apply to purchase art supplies or equipment or studio space rental, any resources that you need to start or complete or present a body of work. Another fundable item is career promotion. So right now we're seeing as social gatherings and exhibitions aren't as frequent as they used to be due to COVID-19, and we don't really know how long that will last. We see a lot of artists looking to boost their online presence or even translate some of their practice to more of an online platform. So this grant can help you with that. You can apply for projects that are aimed at advertising your work or demonstrating your skill level. So this could be something as simple as developing a website or a portfolio, documenting your work, whether it's audio or visual, or even crafting online presentations. Another item is training. So whether it's in person or virtual, I hope to be optimistic and think that hopefully in person would be attainable. But you can apply to attend a class or a workshop. As long as this is sort of aimed at enhancing your particular skill level or professional development. So this could be something as informal as a one-on-one mentorship taught by someone acknowledged in your field. It could be a master class. It could be a conference. There are a variety of manifestations of what training could mean. And then another item, which we may or may not see a lot of, is travel. So along the lines of training, you could apply for a cost of transportation, lodging, or food for a training. You could apply for costs to attend a professional conference or even research in developing your own practice and work. And last and certainly not least, and something that I want to encourage everyone to take advantage of if you can, is that for this year only, we are allowed 50% award to be used towards artist fees. So what this means is that out of the grant amount you request, you can take up to 50% to pay yourself for your time and for your expertise. So let's say that the grant range is up to $1,000. When you are crafting your application, you can request up to $500 towards artist fees. So I encourage everyone, as you craft your project budget, to see what you need to complete your project, see if you have that room to request those artist fees, because it is particular for this year only, and I encourage everyone to do so. Now, real quick, I'll go over what the grant will not fund. First, scholarships for undergraduate or graduate level education. Now, if you are a student who is enrolled in an art degree granting program, you cannot apply for this grant. So this is any sort of general fine arts degree or specific art degree, you are ineligible. Now, if you are in a degree granting program for a field outside of art, so let's say that you're getting your master's in accounting or a PhD in anthropology, you are eligible to apply for this grant funding because it's for your artistic career practice. Now, the grant will not fund projects that support or oppose a particular political candidate for office, nor projects that are exclusive to members of a particular religious faith group. This grant will not fund nonprofit initiatives. We do have other opportunities for that, and also you can speak to your local arts council to see if they have recommendations. But again, this is a grant for individual artists and in small artist teams. And also projects that don't have a direct effect on your growth as an artist. So you can't apply for this grant on behalf of someone else or on behalf of a client. And although we are completely in support of artists, supporting other artists, which is great, this grant is really for you and your work and your development. So I'm going to take you through really quickly sort of the basic sections of the application. The first is the project narrative. This is very pragmatic. It's essentially how you're going to spend the funds. So you're going to explain your proposed project and how it will have an impact on your career as an artist. And I want to emphasize this part. You really want to play this up. You want to tell the panelists how this grant is going to be impactful to your career. The project narrative will also separately include your artist statement. And so the project narrative is your project, the proposed use of funds. It is explaining what this project will allow you to do that you cannot do now. And again, talk about how this project will advance your career and your development. And I'll go into more about how to craft an artist statement separately from this. But your proposal needs to be feasible. So again, in terms of being a project manager, right, you want to propose a project that is within your capacity, whether this is cost or access or any other factors. So if you have a more ambitious project that might cost more than the grant range that you're allowed to apply for, you're going to want to show those other sources of income or let the panelists know that you're able to complete this project even though the funds might be, cost a lot more than what you're requesting. The project also needs to be a logical step for you. So it should make sense, with your current body of work, with your professional status, with the shifts in your practice. This needs to be a relevant and helpful project for you at this point in your career. And the more specific you can be, the better. I know that not everyone might have specifics when it comes to their projects, but any information that you can provide at the time of applying, make sure to provide all those details. So general rules of thumb as you're writing this narrative and you're reviewing your application, you want to be simple and declarative. So you want to get to the point. Any space or page limits on the application, please observe them and be efficient. Panelists have a lot to look at. And so if you can be succinct and efficient, that's going to be most helpful when panelists are reviewing your application. And again, the 6 questions, right? The 6 basic questions, who, what, where, when, why, and how. So you're going through your application, you're crafting your narrative, you're writing your artist statement, you're figuring out the budget. When you review that first draft, and if one of these questions aren't answered, go back and make sure that one of the questions are answered. Make sure that you've addressed all the details, and it's very clear about how you're going to spend the money and how this project will come to be. Now, the project narrative is separate from an artist statement. So the project narrative is how you're spending the funds, what the project looked like. It's practical needs and outcomes. And the artist statement are the key ideas and concepts that drive you to create, right? They're what your work focuses on. They're the themes and the concepts which you're exploring in your work. And these two are separate. And last but not least, once you finish, ask someone to read it over. Before you send it in, have someone even unconnected to the art world reading your application. Because, we all know we can get caught up in our own language that we know or specifics that someone might not be privy to. And so you're going to want to have someone, an outsider from the art world, right, look at your application and make sure that it makes sense, that anyone could read it and understand what you are saying. So I do want to emphasize that you are not required to spend any of your own money. So when you are looking at the budget forms and you're crafting your expenses and income budgets, you'll see this third column on the right that's titled match. I want you all to think of this as more so other sources of income. You may or may not even fill out that column. So line by line, you'll put the description of your expenses, you'll put the total amount, and then how much of the grant will go towards that expense. So for many of you, the total amount and the grant amount will be the exact same because you might be only using the money from the grants for your project. Now, if you do have a more ambitious project, something that you'll use funding outside of the grant, this is where it would be split up into that third column. And I can talk more with you all after this about it. I know it might be a little confusing. But again, with income, it's the same thing. This is going to be very simple for many of you. It could just say description, NC Arts Council Artist Support Grant. Total, $1,000, grant $1,000. And you might not even list anything in that third column. That's more so for these other projects that require that extra income. You can list it if it's there, but you do not need to complete that third column if you don't have other sources. And so when you're thinking about your budget, again, providing detail is better than not. So I know that specifics might be hard to nail down, but I want to show you this example of travel costs. So on the left, this applicant is listing $600 to travel, and a panelist can look at that and assume that you've done your research, that you've come to that amount, but it's not really evident what is that sum. On the right-hand side, you can see it broken down by mileage, lodging, and meals. It shows the panelists that you've done your research, that you've thought of everything from A to Z, that you've really taken the time to think through the project and therefore can carry it out. And so, yeah, aim for more detail if you can in the budget. Again, just provide what you can. If you don't have the details, just do your best. Now, if you do have supporting documentation for your budget, go ahead and add it to the application. This could be material costs or quotes for services. If you've registered for a class or a workshop, this could be documentation of that registration cost. And even something is if you're studying, on a one-on-one mentorship or part of a class, you can provide your teacher's credentials as well. Again, if you have it, great. If not, don't worry about it, but try to provide as much information as you can. And like I said, you are not required to spend your own money. So we do include that extra column for you to show other sources of income or expenses if you have it. This applies to ambitious projects. You can list any donations you've secured, other grants. Just make sure that you leave enough room to let the panelists know that you actually need this grant that you're applying for, right? You want to make sure that it actually is going to be worthwhile and contribute to this project. So artist resumes, I'll briefly go over. And again, this grant is open to everyone, whether you're a few years in or a few decades in as an artist. And so some of you might be very familiar with artist resumes and have been making them for a long time. For those, I would say keep it to the greatest hits. We don't want resumes any longer than 4 pages. So suggested length is a minimum of 2 pages, maximum of 4. And for those of you who are new to an artist resume or even haven't crafted one, you're going to want to focus on your activities as an artist. So this is a resume highlighting your artistic achievements and career. So this could be exhibitions, you know, publishing history, residencies, any workshops that you've taught, any panels or education. You might have employment if it's relevant to your artistic practice. Again, this is not necessarily, you know, that time that you worked at the bookstore. This is all artistic related. And so for those of you who might be concerned about filling out this page link for the artistic resume, maybe you've just started your artistic career, and even more so, make the case that this grant is going to be that catalyst that's going to take your career to the next level. So if you have limited experience as an artist, you know, talk about your existing artistic achievements, and sort of tell a story. You know, how did you get to this point in your life where you wanted to start your artistic career? Or, you know, how did your background and your other experiences lead into that? And we're all here to help you, whether it's your local arts council or myself. You know, whether you're just starting out or you're trying to edit it down, please reach out to us for help if you need it. So when I mentioned that the true criteria of the application are artistic merit and project merit, work samples are the primary source for artistic merit. They are essential for a successful application. They are what the panelists will see first. And they are going to be the most important part of your application. So strong, high quality work samples are essential. And so when you're thinking about including work samples, you're going to want to be selective, and you're going to want to choose work samples that are relative to the project that you're proposing. So pay attention to what you choose to submit. When you're thinking about what work samples to include, you want to show strong and recent representations of the quality of your work, and you want them to be cohesive and relevant to the project you've proposed. One example that I can think of is if you are an artist that works in mini media. So maybe you do photography and performance art and ceramics, and you do them all really well. You're going to have to choose which samples will support the project that you're applying for. So let's say that you're applying for a photography-based project. You know, it would make more sense for you to include examples of your photographic work rather than a performance piece, right? So as you're thinking about this, you want to choose, you know, the work samples that will best exemplify your skill that matches the project that you're talking about. So with your work samples, you will provide an inventory list. This will look very different for each discipline, and I'll go through that discipline by discipline, but it's essentially providing sort of a complementary text describing what the work sample is and its significance. So for dance and performing arts, you may submit recorded performances, and the total time of these 3 performances may not exceed 10 minutes. So when you're thinking about your inventory list, for each work sample, you're going to want to include the date and location of performance, the title of the piece, the names and roles of any key collaborators, so directors, choreographers, performers, or actors. And you may also include a short summary for context if you wish. Music is along the same lines, so you can include up to 3 recorded performances. Whether this is audio or video, the total time of these 3 performances may not exceed 10 minutes. The description is also similar, so date and location of the performance, the title of the piece, the names and roles of any key people, and a short summary. And now for music, if you're a composer or a songwriter, you can also submit scores, lyrics, and lead sheets as you find them appropriate for the work samples. Writing. So the genres of literary arts that we accept, or the different disciplines, are fiction, creative nonfiction, playwrights, poets, prose. This is generally what we're looking for in the writing genre. Now, fiction, creative nonfiction, and playwrights, you can submit no more than 12 pages of either 1 to 2 manuscripts. So the total amount for each may not exceed 12 pages. Poets, you can submit 5 to 7 poems. And playwrights, if you have a documentation of a recorded performance or a stage reading, you can submit that as well. And just make sure it doesn't exceed 5 minutes. So I want to spend a little bit more time on visual arts and crafts since it tends to be a lot of the applications we receive. Again, this grant is for all disciplines. But real quick about visual arts and crafts, you want your images to be high quality. So no blurred images, no pixelation. High quality means, you know, if the panelist is looking at your image on a computer, that's good, right? It doesn't have to be high quality for print. You know, if you can look at it on the laptop or on a projector and it comes across, you know, without being blurry, pixelated, you're good to go. The inventory list is simpler, more straightforward for visual art. With each work sample uploaded, you'll provide the title, the date of completion, the media, and the dimensions. So I wanted to provide some examples of what this might look like for a 2-dimensional piece and a 3-dimensional piece. So what you want to aim for is no keystoning. This is sort of when the picture is tilted away from the camera, right? So it's sort of, the perspective is distorted, you know, the image proportions may be off. So aim for clear, high quality imagery. You want images that contain only your work. So for example, on the left-hand side, you can see that this 3-dimensional object is isolated. The panelist knows that that is the object which they're reviewing and nothing else. Your background simple. Yeah, I know a lot of people may not have a backdrop, right? So just if you're thinking about documenting your work, you know, try to find a white wall or maybe a simple platform to where you can put your object and there's no distractions in the background. A 2-dimensional work on the right, for example, it's only of the picture plane. So meaning that you're not seeing the frame, you're not seeing someone holding it, you're seeing the piece of work itself and only the piece of work, right? And so the picture frame, picture plane is aligned with the camera lens, so there's no keystoning, it's straight on, nice and simple. So real quick, some examples. These came from Pitts County Arts Council. And they sort of always say that the difference between the image on the left and on the right is that when the panelist is reviewing the one on the left, they said, well, I'll consider this image if the vase also comes with the brick wall, right? So you can see that he's talking about the distractions and the image on the left versus the clear, straightforward image on the right. So when you're shooting 3-dimensional objects, you're going to want to aim for the simple, you know, just clear background if you can. So 2-dimensional work, this is sort of examples of what not to do, right? Compared to the image that I showed you in the beginning where you just saw the collage, you want to stray away from these examples. So unless the frame is integral to the piece, don't include it. You know, don't pull back to where you can see someone propping it up. This is sort of what you want to aim for, right? So the panelist is only seeing the painting, they're seeing what they need to review and nothing extraneous. So film, you can submit 1 or more completed films. I should say 1 to 2, with video clips not exceeding 5 minutes. And we want high quality videos, and so your inventory list, the descriptions for each film will include the date and location of the performance, the title of the piece, again, the name and the roles of any key collaborators, so directors, actors, choreographers, and also a short summary for context. Now, we mentioned that audio and video must be high quality, but also inherently that means large file sizes. So for any of you uploading audio or video files, we prefer that you provide a link to the video. So if you can utilize platforms like YouTube or Vimeo, that's going to be preferred. If you have questions about how to do that, please let us know. If you upload a high quality MP4 directed to the application, that's when it tends to crash. So please let us know. It could be something as simple as a link collection form, or just having simple descriptions and links for the work samples that will take us to the video. And if the work is professionally mastered, you also want to note that as well. So again, samples must be of your work only. This is a grant for you, your artistic and professional development. When we talk about work being recent, we recommend keeping work completed within the past 3 years. Now, if you tend to work slower or you have more, you have projects that tend to take a few years and you're concerned about having enough work that fits within this timeline, please let us know. This is sort of a strong suggestion, but we understand that maybe there's some work you've created in the past 5 years that is more relevant to the project you're proposing. And if you think that it's high quality enough and that you want to include it, you know, it obviously isn't a hard line. So just try to keep it recent and relevant. Now, letters of recommendation are optional, but they are the least important part of your application. So I don't want anyone to be stressing out over this. But if you do have letters of recommendation, you know, you're welcome to include them. You want references that can speak to your ability as an artist, not a personal recommendation. You want a professional artistic recommendation. So when you're choosing a reference, you want someone that has firsthand knowledge of your artistic work and career. You want someone that has professional credentials, and you want someone that has a more recent understanding of your practice and of the work that you make. So how recent is their encounter with your work? Use that as a guiding principle when choosing your references. And here's just a quick application checklist. So when you're going through the application and you've done your draft, you're going to want to make sure that these items are completed. Your application profile. When you go to the application, you'll see this is the simple, you know, contact information, general information about you. None of it is used against you. It's mostly for us to see who is applying and who we're reaching. And so your narrative is your project narrative. Again, how you're going to use the funds. What does the project look like? The artist statement is another item. So again, these are the key ideas and goals that drive you to create. We ask that you please keep it to 1 page. And if you have any questions about how to craft an artist statement, please let us know, because I can send you some resources, some great simple tips and tricks about how to craft an artist statement. Artist resume, again, you want to keep a resume specific to your artistic career. For those of you that have been doing this for a while, you know, keep it to the only greatest hits, 4 pages maximum. Budget support, if you have documentation for your budget, you're going to want to include that. And then general support materials. One thing I want to note is that this section, when you're thinking about choosing support materials for this project or for your application, you only want to choose materials that will enhance your application. So as you're going through, and, you know, it might be a tendency to, you know, throw on as much as you can to provide as much evidence of your, you know, of your merit or your artistic abilities, but take a step back, think, okay, is this material actually going to enhance the application? Is it relevant to the project? If it's not, don't worry about it. And again, last and certainly not least, and probably most important, I'd say, are the work samples and inventory list. If you have samples of work that you're able to retake, if you've noticed they're blurry or not high quality, then I recommend doing so. Again, this will be the first thing the panelists see, so you're really going to want to make sure that these are top notch. And then just as a reminder, the application deadline is September 30th, so that's a little over 2 weeks. And so if you receive a grant, congratulations. I hope some of you who are watching this do. We're really excited about it. You'll enter into a contract with the Haywood County Arts Council. So they are the primary arts organization for your region. But again, if you're in a different county, any of the arts organizations in your counties can help you with this application. But the main contractual partner is the Haywood County Arts Council. So if you are awarded a grant and you're promoting and marketing the project, you must use the proper North Carolina Arts Council logo and credit line. And also importantly, projects must be completed before June 30th. This is the end of our fiscal year, and all projects must be completed before then. You cannot apply grant funds to a project that's already completed. You can apply funds to a project that maybe is currently ongoing. So you might have started a project a few months ago and it's going to take a while to get it finished. So you could apply for a project that, as long as it's completed before June 30th. So if you have any questions, again, you can reach out to any of the arts organizations, the arts councils in your county. The primary contact is the Haywood County Arts Council. Lee Forrester is the executive director. And I would probably recommend email is probably the most secure way to reach them during this time. But again, I don't know, Lee, if you're here and want to say otherwise, but phone and email and web, you can access the application there. Again, the deadline is September 30th. So that's all that I have to talk to you about. Now I figure we could probably open this up to question and answer. Hannah, I don't know how you want to go about this part, but yeah, if any of you all have questions, I can see you're probably typing them in the chat box. So Kelly, you say if you're not turning 18 until December 12th, can you still apply? That's actually a fantastic question. I believe that so you have to be eligible to apply at 18 years old. So at the time of the application, you have to be 18. So anonymous attendee asks, can the artistic grant cover costs of publishing written work? Yes, because that is within the capacity of bringing your work to audiences. Cynthia, you ask, is there a limit on the resolution of images submitted, or is 300 DPI the maximum? There's not a limit. I recommend 300 DPI. Again, it will be, this is what will be sort of viewed on a digital screen. So 300 DPI is something to aim for. And then another person asks, is the application online, not paper? Now, the application is available online. However, if you do not have the access to an online application, talk to your local arts council. They can provide you with a hard copy or help figure out how you can get this application submitted, because we want to make sure that everyone is able to submit. And I apologize, I just see that I think the sound quality has changed, so hopefully you all have been able to hear me.
We've been able to hear you, yep.
Okay, sorry, I know it goes in and out. I sort of live in a limited service area, as I'm sure some of you might understand. Now, about literary applications, Stephen asks, what does 12 pages mean? Is it single spaced, double spaced font size? That's a great question. I would say keep it to the standard, whatever you choose to submit, whatever works for you. I would say don't submit a 4-point size font to get everything in, right? Keep it legible, keep it readable for the panelists. But single, double spaced, really, we don't have any restrictions on that, I guess. I don't know, Hannah, do you all have preferences for the writing submissions?
We do not. Katie?
I would say 11-point font is probably the lowest you want to go.
Yeah, because anything smaller than that, you might limit accessibility with the reading the application, especially on digital screen.
I would say if it's unpleasant to read your application, it probably is not a good idea to do it that way.
Yeah. Try to keep the panelists in mind here. Someone asked, is there a minimum amount you should declare in the budget proposal? The grant range, I believe, is 500 to 1,000. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so the minimum amount you'll request is 500. The maximum is 1,000. So again, with artist fees, you could request anywhere from 250 to 500. So just a pro tip there. And if you're using outside professional help, or estimates helpful? Yes. If you have a service quote or any other sort of estimate you can provide for the services you need to complete your project, Dale, I would recommend including that if you have it. Kelly, I'm going to look into the 18. I'm going to triple check on that because I want to make sure I provide you the right option if you're 18 at the time of receiving the grant or at applying. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully we can get your contact information. If you can send your contact information to Hannah, and I'll make sure to double check. I don't want to say no and have it be incorrect, but yeah, sorry, that's a lot of information. Okay, Virginia asked, should the artist statement be included within the project description? No, now I don't know the specific setup of this application, Hannah, but I believe that the project narrative is separate from the artist statement in your application. Is that right?
In the paper version, the artist statement is just an attachment. In the online Google form version, the artist statement and the project narrative are in the same question. So the project description is limited to 1,000 words, but the actual question does not have a limit. So you can put your artist statement in that same question box.
Okay. Hopefully that answered your question, Virginia. Now, I think, Deborah, you asked where to send or bring the final application. Okay, good. You answered it to Haywood County Arts Council. Let's see. If the application to attend a workshop or improve your skills is canceled, what do you do about that? So I would say, Courtney, apply for that workshop, but have a plan B. We understand, especially with COVID, that something that you might apply for might get canceled and it's out of your control. If that happens, come back to your arts council, talk to them about it, and figure out we can always figure out a way to figure it out. But meaning to say that we can't predict everything. So if you apply for a workshop and it's canceled, we'll deal with it then. And hopefully we can find another way to have the grant be used. Okay. I'm sorry, everyone has so many great questions, and I'm sorry if I haven't gotten to all of them.
You are great. Thank you, Sydney, for all that you're doing. I did just put a link in the side chat to you privately if you wanted to peek at that. I'm keeping up with the questions and then Xing out the ones that we've answered so far.
Okay, perfect. So thanks everyone for bearing with us. You all are incredible and asking a lot of questions. Perhaps many more than some of the other workshops. So good. This is great. Let's see. Thanks for bearing with us, everybody. I'm trying to make sure I answer all of your questions.
So it looks like somebody's asking about a workshop in October. If someone receives a grant, can it reimburse for something they've already paid for? Because the decisions will probably not be made by then. So
no,
I think
you cannot apply for something that is received prior to receiving the grant.
So that would probably make it your workshop in October ineligible for
yeah. That's right. Let's see. Maybe I'm having trouble accessing the doc. Maybe are there any questions you might be able to answer or sort of read and I can try to answer?
Could you go over the part about the 50% artist fees that are they're allowed to use this time around?
Yes. So again, when you are thinking about the artist fees, when you're crafting your budget, first and foremost, you want to make sure that you're able to complete the project you're proposing. Now, if your project takes all of the grant amount you're requesting and you don't have funds for the artist fees, like let's say it'll take $1,000, then unfortunately you might not be able to. However, if you're able to complete your project with enough room to request any remaining artist fees, I recommend everyone does so. You don't have to tell us how you're going to use them. That is your prerogative. So in the application, when you are requesting, you're putting in your expenses budget, you can just simply list artist fees and put the amount. You do not have to tell us when you spend it on whatever you want. It's for you, paying yourself for your time and your expertise. I hope that explains it. It doesn't happen a lot in grants, and so as an artist too, I'm like, take advantage of it if you can. We know that it's difficult out there right now. Okay, I got access to the doc. Let's see if I can answer some of your questions that I haven't already.
I'll throw one at you. I
Okay.
don't think this has been answered. I was trying to grab questions and listen at the same time. May I use videos of actors audition for playwriting project on Zoom, and where to send or bring the final application? I think I answered that in the side chat, but that's the Haywood County Arts Council.
Yeah, I would, the playwriting, I would say, yeah, I mean, you can submit a video of a staged reading. And so, I mean, if you have an actor's audition, that's all you have, then, but if it's a great reading of your work, I don't see why not, you know what I mean? So if it's a good example of a reading, then go ahead and include it, I would say. So let's see. For your application work samples, can I submit a grant-funded project where I was the lead artist for it? That's a great question. I would say, I would recommend you find samples that are completely of your work only, especially because this grant is for, you know, you and your artistic process and your own work. However, I can see where if it's a small group that's applying, or you know, a band or a team that, and the samples may have been of work you all have created in the past, I could see how that would be relevant. But I guess what I would say is make sure it's relevant. I would aim for work that you've created solely by yourself, or the team that you're applying with, you know, it's only their work. You want to only show, you know, what's representative of your talent, of who's applying, you know what I mean? Someone asks, if I get accepted into an MFA program during the grant, but don't begin the program until after it's over, is that acceptable? Yeah, I mean, if you start an MFA program in fall 2021, of course, you know, you're not in that program during the grant period. So absolutely. Someone asked, can I use joint marketing with nonprofit and NC Arts Council? I would, doing your marketing, you just, the least you have to include is North Carolina Arts Council, but you can include whatever other, you know, projects or people or sponsors, you know, that have helped you with the project. You know, if you have those other sources of income, please credit them. Just the bare minimum is including the marketing materials for the North Carolina Arts Council. And again, I think we answered this, but if you apply to attend a workshop and it's canceled, does it have to be confirmed before you receive the grant? Again, we can't predict everything, and I would assume that the conference would also think that it's confirmed until something happens, right? So apply for it. If it gets canceled, you'll come back to the Haywood County Arts Council. We'll try to find a solution. So just have a plan B in the back of your mind. Another way that you could use this fund. So essentially what could happen is, you know, you could come with another proposal, they would bring it to the panel, and, you know, long story short, when in doubt, apply. We'll figure it out with you. The world is very hard to predict right now. So I don't want that to limit your application. And this is a question that I'm actually not that certain about. So the applicant asks, my project is garment design, not fashion, but function. Can I have someone sew the final garment? I will have to look into this for you. I apologize, my expertise is in visual art, but I can ask some of my colleagues at the North Carolina Arts Council and get back to you on this one. I would hope or guess that if you're applying for the supplies to create the designs, or, you know, if the project for which you're applying applies to the part that you're creating, I would see why not. But let me ask, and again, if you can provide your information to Hannah, I think she put her email in the chat. And if you want to provide more details or specifics or any project ideas that you're thinking of, the more specific you can be, the better. Then I can relay it to my colleagues and we can sort of figure it out. But sorry, I don't have an answer for that one just yet because it's a really good question that we haven't received. So someone asks, when will decisions be made and announced? Hannah, you might have a better estimate of this one depending on when the panel is. I don't know off the top of my head.
Our panel is, the deadline September 30th. So I would say mid-October is probably when you'll hear. Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, but
I would say the interviews would probably take place mid, and then mid to late October, there'll be the final decisions.
that's fair,
It'll
yeah.
just take some time to set up the panel and organize those meetings. But it'll be Lee that does that. So Hannah and I have to wait for her to tell us.
Okay. And then Jane asks if there will be another grant opportunity in the spring or summer of 2021. So this is the first year of the Artist Support Grant, but this is a program that we see happening, for the foreseeable future. I mean, this is a new grant program. This is its first year, but yes, every year, so around this time, you can apply for the new round. Now, if you apply this year, it will not affect your eligibility to apply next year. However, typically with these sort of individual artist programs, you can apply every other year if you've been awarded. So if you've been awarded a grant, typically you can't apply the next year, but you can apply the following. However, for this year and for next year, we're waiving that. So long story long, there will be another granting opportunity. This grant is available every year. So if you don't get it this year, please apply next year and keep on applying. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I know that have applied for the same grant and after multiple times finally got it. And it's all dependent just upon the application pool, the panelists. I mean, there's so many factors. So please do not get discouraged if you don't get a grant this year. This is the first year, right? So there's so many more years of it. There's so many different iterations and ways to submit applications. So yeah, okay. Deborah asked hard copy or electronic. The electronic one is available. However, if you have issues accessing the internet or submitting an application online, the arts councils can work with you and there's a hard copy or trying to get your application translated to electronic. So I think that might be.
I just added a few more questions to the document just in case.
Perfect.
And Sydney, I would just add to that last question that it is preferable that you submit online if possible. Of course, we'll accommodate if you can't, but the review panels will likely take place on Zoom, online, instead of in person. And so it's very helpful if we have your materials electronically. Otherwise, we'll have to scan them in.
Okay, perfect. So someone asked if using outside professional help or estimates helpful. Yes. I may have answered that one, but I'll answer it again. Yes, yes, yes. If you can provide estimates, please do. It'll help your budget. Can the grant be used to help sustain an artist service like a website? Yes, that is bringing your art to the audiences. That is career promotion. Absolutely, you can use this grant to build a website, to support your website. Now, I don't know the particulars about the application because someone does ask, how do I upload the images? Is it on a Google form? Hannah, could you answer this one?
I can. On the Google form, there is both the option of uploading files or adding in a URL link. So you can do it either way.
Okay. I don't see any other new ones that I haven't answered. But if I'm missing them, I apologize. Again, we are all here to answer questions. Seriously, I love answering questions, and everyone on this call and part of this region does as well. You are not bothering us. We want to be here to help you. So when in if you have questions, please ask them. I'll put my email as well in the chat. just if you know, if everyone else is really busy, I can answer them too. So, do you all want to add anything, Anna or Katie? Or
Did you see the question? I think it just came in. If this is available next year, would the rules be the same? I can't remember if you answered that.
Great question. So, yes and no. The artist fees are this year only. So that will not be available next year. Well, I mean, we say that hopefully, you know, COVID isn't going as long as it does. But so as of right now, there will be some changes. As of right now, the artist fees are only available next year. And once it gets a few years in, typically if you've won an award the year prior, you cannot apply. So if you win an award, you can apply every other year, just to give everyone a chance. But for the most part, this will look the same next year. But this is our first year and a learning year, so we're going to see what works and get feedback from everyone. But the bones of it, the individual artist grant for all of these fundable items, should be roughly the same.
I think we got all the questions. Sydney, thank you so much for all your support in this.
Oh, good. You're welcome. Thanks, everyone. I hope I answered your questions. If not, I'm here to answer them through email or phone, and so is Hannah and Katie and everyone else in the region. Yeah, when in doubt, apply. If you have any questions, ask them. We want to award as many grants as possible, and yeah.
Awesome. And then everyone, just so you know, I'm going to go ahead and download this afterwards, and I'll put it on YouTube and send it to all of the arts councils within our region, and they can send it out in an email. Then I'll also post it on our Facebook page as well. So just give me a little bit and I'll get that uploaded tonight.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for sitting through this webinar and listening to us. We're very excited to see your applications, and yeah, thanks again. I guess for spending your evening with us.
All right. Well, thank you guys, and thanks again, Sydney, for all your help.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Bye.